everybody, and welcome to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. I'm your host, Nick Brlansky, joined as always by Nick Horwat here on day 13 of hashtag Dubas Watch. We're not giving this much air on today's show because, as most people are, we're kind of tired of talking about it, and there's no actual update in the Pittsburgh Penguins general manager search. Just to say that it is day 13 since Kyle Dubas was fired and became the number one prospect on the Penguins general manager trade board, and still no news. So we're just going to sit back, wait, and if it happens, again, listen for the magical words during this episode, it happened. If we don't say that, then it didn't happen during the recording. So don't get at us if we finish recording and it happens afterwards. Basically, that's all I have to say on this subject.
That's all you have to say. I mean, I've been having to watch it like a hawk, and it's perfectly fine. I'm having, honestly, a ton of fun doing it because, let's be real, he is the top free agent in the league right now, period. That includes players. But that being said,
yes, that's a conversation for a different day.
It is, but I mean, let's honestly think about some of the free agents this year. Not phenomenal. That being said, we've seen the reports that have come out. They've been conflicting. There have been some this way, some that way. At this point, we're all, at least me and you, are at the point of just tell me when it's announced, and we will react accordingly from there. But still, as everyone doing their due diligence, they are going to be searching Kyle Dubas ad nauseum again today, refreshing Twitter ad nauseum again today. Mm-hmm. And you know what? We don't have to give it much time here, but yeah, it's a search that eventually will end no matter what. The Penguins do need a new GM, and I said it last episode, it needs to be made today. That announcement needs to be made today. If not, tomorrow you need to just make a hire tomorrow that's not Dubas, if that's what you're still waiting on.
Well, yeah, exactly. And if you want to actually know where the Pittsburgh Penguins are at in their general manager search, it hasn't changed since Tuesday. We released an episode called Dubas's Decision. Mm-hmm. Go back and listen to that because that's exactly where they're at today, except everything is just fast forwarded 2 days. The Penguins are still awaiting to hear from Kyle Dubas. But let's move on and talk about non-Kyle Dubas things because, honestly, the GM search, it's good that they're taking their time, especially because it's their first real major hire in hockey as FSG is concerned. So good on them for taking their time, but we're starting to get to the point where it's taking too much time. But let's move on and talk a little bit about some trade bait. Who on the Pittsburgh Penguins is going to be trade bait this offseason? We're just going to go back and forth, name by name, who we think should be on the trade board. And I'm going to start with the most obvious name in the bunch. Mikael Granlund has to be at the top of the trade board for the Pittsburgh Penguins.
He does. It's if you're able to find a taker, he absolutely should be.
That's an important part there.
That's the big piece of it. Is if you're able to find a taker. Put it this way: he makes $5 million, right, and is 31 years old. He falls directly into the list of Brian Rust, Rickard Rakell, and Jason Zucker as early 30-year-olds who make about that much money. Of those four, which one? Which one should be gone? Mikael Granlund's the easy answer because of his abysmal, let's call it for now, his abysmal start to his Penguins tenure. Mm-hmm. Because we don't know if it's going to end. We don't know what a new general manager is going to do with this kind of player. Maybe they find something useful. I don't know. He's at the top of the trade list. He's at the top of the trade list. I just wrote a story. He should also be at the top of the buyout list if we want to go in that direction. There's a number of different ways you could take Mikael Granlund, and none of them are on the team. So he should absolutely be a part of that list. And oh man, that should be quick work too. That should be something that gets done fairly quickly before the draft at the end of the month.
You would hope so, but at the same time, there is a chance, and I'm not ruling out the potential that he comes back to Pittsburgh next year because there is no suitor. There is nobody that wants to take $5 million of Mikael Granlund, and the Penguins don't want to dish out a draft pick to offload a guy that they just acquired 2 months ago. Like, I understand that there's a chance he comes back, and there's even a chance that he has a bounce back season and he becomes a contributing member of the Pittsburgh Penguins. But for that price tag, and we're in off-season mode where price tag is everything, I would say that he's probably the first name, whoever comes in, whether that is Kyle Dubas or Matthew Darsh or Jason Botterill or anybody else, whoever comes in, that's the first name you say, okay, I'm going to start making calls. Apart from, obviously the draft is coming up in a couple weeks. Might want to get on that. But also making a couple calls to see if anybody's interested in Mikael Granlund, or if Ron Hextall was just full of crap at the end of the season where he said multiple teams were interested in him. But again, not something we need to rehash there. But Mikael Granlund, we both agree, is the top of the list for the Pittsburgh Penguins. What's another name that you think should be on the Penguins trade block this summer?
I have another easy one. And then we can probably start getting into the dirt after this one. But Jeff Petrie, right? Just right. He makes a ton of money. I mean, he's at this point damn near the highest paid player on the team. Sorry, second highest paid player on the team. So, yeah, it's for that age and for lack of production. I know, real fresh of Penguins fans to be discussing age and high salaries, but at least the players that we're paying a ton of money to produce. That's the issue with Jeff Petrie here, is he makes a ton of money, and sure, he didn't have the season we all wanted, but he didn't fit the bill of what we wanted. It's hard to put, but essentially everyone knows he doesn't fit here and shouldn't be garnering that much cash. Honestly, he's the type of player that you could probably still find a use for somewhere, even on your own team. And it sucks that the NHL doesn't allow contract restructuring. Because imagine that in this league, first of all. I get why contracts are a thing. We understand why restructuring shouldn't be allowed. But, some very successful leagues do it. And I don't know why it shouldn't be. It's what is wrong with it, I guess. But that, again, discussion for another day. Jeff Petrie's a second obvious option to be traded out of here.
I don't know if I'd go second obvious option, just mainly because I think it's unlikely to happen. All reports indicate that the Penguins coaching staff is in love with Jeff Petrie. And not going to lie, there were times last season where I said it's nice to have somebody else that can eat up minutes and not force Chris Letang to play 30 minutes a night. Yes, that is a positive. But as you mentioned, he failed to meet anybody's expectations when he was traded over, because he was expected to be a 1B to Chris Letang, and he was nowhere near that. He did get injured in the middle of the season. That obviously plays a factor into it, but just the contract compared to what he brought to the table, it didn't align, and it wasn't close to aligning for Jeff Petrie. So by that aspect, I agree. He probably should be a name that you're floating out there. He certainly isn't an untouchable. I think there's only few and far between on this roster of players that are actually untouchable. But I think the only problem with that is, even though you're probably going to sign any of these guys for less than what Jeff Petrie's making, there's not a lot that you can do to replace a second pairing right-hand defenseman in the market this summer. The top right-handed defensemen available are John Klingberg, Matt Dumba, Eric Johnson, and Damon Severson. Severson is the name there that I would target, but I also don't, again, there's 4 names and there's 32 teams.
Yeah.
So that's the odds that you're able to get one of the best names on the market is going to be tough. So Jeff Petrie, while I think, offers should be listened to. Yes. And if there's a good offer, take it, because you need financial flexibility to rebuild this team, especially as quickly as this team supposedly needs to get rebuilt, because they're trying to win Stanley Cups right now.
Oh, yeah. And of those names that you listed there, I don't mind Matt Dumba either. I kind of forgot he was going to be floated out there, but that's an expensive contract. You would pretty much have to lose Petrie before you even got into the Matt Dumba game. That being said, though, in 61 games last year for Petrie, he played fewer games than he did the season before and recorded a couple of more points.
Yeah, he's also on the Penguins, not the bum Montreal Canadiens that ended up with the first overall pick.
Correct, but also you don't want to really make it take that much into consideration. The Canadians were also a year removed from reaching the Stanley Cup final.
This is a COVID year. Come on, don't give me that bull crap.
No,
that was a farce.
But if you look at that season where they went to the Stanley Cup final, Jeff Petrie was rocking 12 goals, 30 assists for 42 points. He's definitely not that. We thought maybe he could get back to that because clearly that was a Canadiens team that had found some success. He was a huge part of it. Last season, we just looked at it as, or I guess the season before, it's weird to discuss it. The 2021-2022 season before Petrie probably just looked at the Canadians were bad, very bad. He was an effect of that. And then this past year, first season in Pittsburgh, we figured maybe he can find that Canadian division spark again. And he just couldn't. So, yeah, he's still a guy that can have his uses. Like I said, a contract restructuring would be awesome in this league. But, yeah, you should absolutely be hearing what people can offer you for him. Just because, I mean, also, I can't remember what the logjam looks like on the Penguins blue line right now. But
it's severe. It's still severe.
Good.
Yeah, the only name that I'm pretty sure that's a free agent is Dmitry Kulikov, right?
Brian Dumoulin.
Yeah, Brian Dumoulin. You still have 9. You had 11 at the end of the season. You still have 9. And to go along with that, another name that I have, and it's a right-handed defenseman, and it's somebody that I could actually see being on the trade block this offseason. That's Jan Ruda.
Yeah.
He did not outperform what I would have expected from Chad Ruhwedel or Mark Friedman in that spot. And at that point, it's unnecessary because you're paying much more money to an older gentleman to play that position and play it not as effectively in some aspects as Chad Ruhwedel and Mark Friedman. Why can't I say Chad Ruhwedel's name today? But no, regardless, it was an unnecessary signing at the level of you had guys that could play at that level for cheaper and for shorter term. Why are you going out to get this guy? Now, understandably, the one thing that he brings to the table that neither Chad or Mark bring to the table, the two frat boys of the Penguins organization, Jan Ruda brings size. Did he use it? In some instances, he did. But the Pittsburgh Penguins as a whole were soft in front of their own net. So what really did that bring to the table that was barely even effective for the Pittsburgh Penguins? So yeah, Jan Ruda, to me, I think he's probably higher on the trade list than Jeff Petrie, just because I think Petrie has more redeemable qualities. I understand the cap hit is much more severe, but also that means it's harder to move. So I think Jan Ruda is a name that you're gonna see, whether it's on Saravalli and Daily Faceoff, whether that's mentioned by Elliot Friedman at Sportsnet. Somebody's gonna mention that Jan Ruda is on the trade block this summer.
Probably. I mean, it was an interesting signing when it happened, but I was able to get behind it though. It was a signing of useful veteran, championship pedigree defenseman to fill out the final end of the right side. Now, at the very beginning of the season, we thought this is going to be great. This is going to work out just fine. We're not even going to worry about it. And as time went on, we saw what happened. You know, it's also a more movable deal. It's also a much easier deal to pull off than it is Jeff Petrie at that price at that age. And also no clauses involved. That's a huge part of it as well. Jan Ruda, you can kind of just sail away wherever, whenever. You can do it next year if you wanted to. So it's a much more movable deal as well, and I'm with you on that. That makes total sense for the Penguins.
Do you have another name, Horwat? I have 2. Don't have to get too deep into one of them, but do you have another name for somebody that should be on the Penguins trade list?
I'm just trying to think of someone interesting because, I mean, let's be honest with ourselves. There needs to be some sort of splash on this team, right? Where I look at this team a lot like, kind of like the Leafs, sort of. They need that splash to happen in order for big changes to be made and big noise to be had. We don't have that option, though.
I think part of that could be the splash is not bringing Jason Zucker back. I mean, for one, they might not be able to afford it, but for two, that name in the locker room, that'll turn some heads just by sure innocence of he's not coming back. You're not seeing Jason Zucker walk through that door. If that happens, I think that would classify as the splash, especially considering his cap hit was over $5 million. So that gives you flexibility if you move on from him. But the problem is you filled it with Granlund. We don't have to get back into that, but I think that could classify as the splash for this team is if Zucker doesn't return.
It would, because you look at someone who would qualify as a splash like Rickard Rakell. Okay, you don't want to get rid of him, though. All right, Brian Rust, full no move for another 2 seasons. Sorry. Or else I'd be all about that, but his clauses are at the wrong end of the deal. Sorry. And then who else? I mean, Jeff Carter, full no move. Can't move him. You're not moving off of one of the core.
I'd put him on the trade list just to see what's out there.
You put him on that list to see what you can get, but plus everyone else is out of a deal too. Like, you're not going to say Drew O'Connor. He doesn't have a contract right now anyway. RFA, so maybe that's part of it. Who else are you going to move? Yeah, like I'm out of
glad
options.
You didn't say Jake Gensel. I was gonna smite you like the Lord and whatever his name is in Hercules. I forget. Zeus. I'll smite you like Zeus, throw down a lightning bolt, because you don't trade 40 goal scorers. Stop saying trade Jake Gensel because he's small, whatever reasoning you have, it doesn't matter. Don't trade a 40 goal scorer.
Yeah, one of the new GM's first orders of business should be getting Jake Gensel signed to an extension. I'm not trading him at all. Don't worry. There of the untouchables, it genuinely goes Crosby, Malkin, Letang, Gensel. I mean, that's it. That's it. You don't want to trade guys like Raquel or P.O. Joseph, or I forgot Ty Smith's down there.
No, I agree with that. I might put Gensel above Letang, and that could be a conversation we have in a couple.
That is a conversation for another day. But I think I just kind of threw names out. I wasn't really necessarily going for order.
Oh yeah, perfect.
But those 4 you could slide. Like I said, P.O. Joseph on there if you wanted to. You could slide Rickard Rakell if you really wanted to. But it's I'm out of options just because the clauses get in the way of making splash deals, and this team needs a splash deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they currently have 8 forwards signed. Slim pickings, right? Yeah. Slim pickings of people that you can choose from. We talked about Granlund. We talked about Petrie and Ruda to be on there. Same with Jeff Carter. And honestly, Casey DeSmith. We don't have to talk very long about it, but I would have Casey DeSmith on the trade block to see what you could get for him. Because if you bring back Tristan Jarry, and for some reason, I'm starting to lean towards thinking that that's probably what they end up doing. Don't ask me why. It is not backed by any reports. It's just a gut feeling that it feels like Tristan Jarry, looking at the landscape, it feels like Tristan Jarry's back. And if that is the case, Casey DeSmith needs to get his pink slip. He needs to get his bags, and he needs to get out of Pittsburgh, because you cannot run this duo. I said it yesterday on Penguins to Go, so I talked about it for 20 minutes. You can go listen to it there, anywhere you get podcast, or on Inside the Penguins on YouTube. But you can't run this back for the 4th straight year with the same 2 goalies. It's just not happening.
No, we shouldn't have run it back last season.
No,
and I was off. In my case last year, I was all for bringing Jarry back to legitimately see what he can do and sending DeSmith out the door for anybody else. I can remember the names I had last year. I think Halak was on there. I probably had Dave Riddick. But this season, I'm rolling in the direction of we need 2 new goalies. Get Connor Hellebuck in here and find a Dave Riddick again, maybe. I don't know. Find a backup that is feasible. We get Casey DeSmith had some great moments this season and looked like he could be the starter this year. And then the IHF championship happened. Take that one for what you will. Played pretty good internationally in a popular international contest, but also
it's not best on best.
But yeah, it's kind of here are guys that aren't in the playoffs and guys that wanted to be here. You're playing with
aren't bunch injured.
You're playing with a bunch of guys from Europe. Have fun.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's still something to speak of, but he also didn't win a medal. So,
yeah, that's the collapse, which, I mean, the Penguins know full well about collapsing late in seasons and late in games. But we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, the Stanley Cup final is starting in a couple days. So we're going to look at the 2 teams and cherry pick some players for the Pittsburgh Penguins and see who would help the Penguins the most if the Pens were able to just pluck them right off the rosters of the Florida Panthers and the Vegas Golden Knights. We'll be right back. to the Tip of the Ice-Burgh podcast, brought to you as always by InsideThePenguins.com. Obviously, if you're listening to this, you have found us in some way, shape, or form, and we appreciate you tuning in. You can tune in on YouTube. If you are listening to it on podcast form right now, you can watch us on YouTube at Inside the Penguins. Or if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you very much. Nice to see you waving at the camera. Hello. You can listen to us on the go. You can listen to us anywhere you get your podcasts from. Just search Tip of the Ice-Burgh. You get all full episodes of Tip of the Ice-Burgh. You get all episodes of Penguins to Go. And guess what? We do special episodes from time to time as well, which, listen, I'm not saying that we're going to have great guests this summer, but I am saying we're going to have great guests this summer. So make sure you subscribe, make sure you like, make sure you download all the fun stuff. We appreciate you. And we continue to talk hockey throughout the summer because that's just what we do, Horwat. For some reason, we sit here and talk hockey, and for some reason, people want to hear it. So thank you. We cannot, honestly and seriously, shtick aside, we cannot thank you enough for tuning in and choosing to spend some of your time with us, because it's crazy that anybody does. But let's talk a little bit about the Stanley Cup final. We mentioned it on Tuesday, talked a little bit about the Penguins that will be sitting in the press box, but technically under contract for these two teams, a.k.a. Teddy Blueger, Phil Kessel, and Patrick Hornqvist. And now let's go to players that are playing and that we would actually like to see come back to the Pittsburgh Penguins and see them play in the black and gold. We're going to pick a player from each Stanley Cup finalist to come over, if we had the choice, to just bring them to the Pittsburgh Penguins. We're going to do an all-inclusive one, and then we're going to do a realistic one where we take out the superstars. I think it's fair to say, now you can disagree with me, Horwat, all-inclusive. Vegas, I'm taking Jack Eichel. Florida, I'm taking Matthew Tkachuk, and I'm just wiping my hands of that. That is the easy, simple answer to me. Do you agree?
Matthew Tkachuk for sure. And Vegas is such a weird team, right? Like they have Jack Eichel, but they don't have the real deal standout star. Mark Stone was going to be there, and then he got injured like 2 seasons in a row. Pietrangelo, I've never been super duper fond of as being the superstar. Definitely a leader, definitely a captain, definitely of that ilk. Just not the same. So I think, yeah, it's pretty cut and dry. It goes Jack Eichel. So Tkachuk, Eichel for the two, just 1As on each team.
Could you imagine? And he plays that position. Could you imagine Jack Eichel in the Phil Kessel spot on the Penguins power play? I mean, they probably still find a way to make it very, very frustrating to watch. Yeah. But man, Jack Eichel in that spot, nothing against Ricardo Rakell. I like Rax. Nothing against Brian Rust when he's there. I like Rusty. But Jack frickin' Eichel? Yeah, that would be something. So let's go to the more, not obvious answers here. Excluding the stars, who from Vegas would you want on the Pittsburgh Penguins?
Ooh, Vegas. Let's see. I was looking at Florida, so I'm going to need a minute because just trying to flip through who's on Vegas, because like I just said, there's not many obvious big names, and I'm going to keep Teddy Blueger and Phil Kessel out of this.
So, we'll get to them. Well, not them. We'll get to Teddy. Sorry,
that's
Phil.
Fair. He's old, and it is what it is.
Dang.
Hey, it is what it is.
A Kevin Hart special, the Heart to Heart with him and Don Cheadle. Dang.
Honestly, no.
I'm 30. He said, I think I'm like 58 years old. He goes, dang. And it got very awkward. But yeah, you and Phil Kessel probably shouldn't go in a room for a couple of days after that. But go ahead, Vegas. Pick a player.
It's difficult. It depends on what part of this team you want to rebuild. And I assume we would want to start with the bottom 6 forward group. And how about Keegan Colasar? There's a fun one. Little off the beaten path. 26 years old. Yeah, 26. Only had 18 points this season, but playing as a bottom line forward on the Vegas Golden Knights. Hasn't played every game of the postseason, I think. I might be wrong about that. But it's come up huge a couple of times. I don't have too much on him. I just know that Vegas Golden Knights have one of the deeper teams in the NHL and have a fourth line so good that Teddy Blueger isn't fully needed. And they're still making the cup final. We talked ad nauseum over the years of how good of a depth piece Teddy Blueger is and would be valued on many teams around this league. Turns out Vegas wasn't one of them, really. They had a bottom 6 already in place where he was useful for a little bit and had his moments, and is still there and break glass in case of emergency type player for Vegas. But now Keegan Colasar is there with 74 games in the regular season this year, 8 goals, 10 assists, 18 points for a bottom six. It's not, or bottom line, not terrible.
No, 8 goals and 18 points is everything that Teddy Blueger was before this season, right?
Yeah.
Like that's what he was bringing to the team. And, I don't hate that pick. It's off the wall. It's off the board. I didn't expect you to say Keegan Colasar. What I'm going with is a name that probably some people have expected because we've talked about this gentleman before, especially at the trade deadline this past season. I wanted him from St. Louis at the deadline. The Penguins couldn't pull it off. I would take Ivan Barbashev in a heartbeat. He can play center. He could play left wing. He has thrived since arriving in Vegas, 16 points in 23 games to end the regular season. And now he has 15 points in 17 playoff games this postseason. The best part about it, he's a UFA this summer. Oh, will I be writing and speaking into existence positive affirmations? Penguins sign Ivan Barbashev. That's what I want. The only problem is if they win the cup, he falls into the cup tax, and you're probably going to have to pay a little bit more dough to get Ivan Barbashev in your bottom 6.
Given the tenure he's had with Vegas, his cup tax has probably already gone up. I mean, you mentioned 16 points in 23 games, 15 and 17. I was looking at that name, but then I kind of remembered that UFA piece and wanted to look for a guy who already has a contract, at least in my decision making. That's how I looked at it. But no, I mean, that would have been an easy first option, right? We see what he's doing with this Vegas Golden Knights team. It's impressive. It was someone that could have been shipped out with Ryan O'Reilly, right? It could have been that could have been the 2-for-1 of the century, right?
Oh, yep. Hypotheticals that make me happy. Yes.
Incredible that St. Louis team wasn't better with how many great pieces they had to send off. But yeah, that's obvious. That's another easy choice. You're absolutely correct. I just didn't like that he didn't have a contract in the next season, and that was my only option. They're my only reasoning for not.
Yeah, sometimes the known is better than the unknown, and right now the contract for Ivan Barbashev is completely unknown past this season. Let's move over to the Eastern Conference champion Florida Panthers, an 8 seed that took down the Boston Bruins, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Carolina Hurricanes. They were running through the original 6. Now they're going to try to take out the 31st of 32 teams in the NHL, the Vegas Golden Knights, who from Florida, excluding the superstars, that's Tkachuk, that's Ekblad, that's Barkov. I'd say Bobrovsky's in that. Who would you take from the Florida Panthers?
Bobrovsky might be in that list, but I wasn't taking him anyway. How's about Carter Verhaeghe?
Oh my God, we have the exact same name.
Shocker. I wonder why. Could it be because he played 81 games this past season, scored 73 points, 42 of them goals, and is making just over $4 million at the age of 27?
Oh,
not
how
over
do you get
5.
so lucky? How do you get so lucky, Florida?
That one. You don't need to go into too many more details. That one. Do we? Who else on this team would? Well, kind of makes sense. Sam Reinhart costs a lot of money. Sam Bennett, maybe.
I'll tell you one that, again, a name that has been mentioned on this show before, and it was mentioned when we were in the draft process and looking at prospects back, I believe, in 2020. And the Penguins had the 15th overall pick. They traded it to Toronto and Toronto took Rodion Amirov. I haven't seen his name since. But, I like what I've seen from Anton Lundell. I really do. The guy is massive. He's a two-way forward, and he brings some scoring punch, excuse me. But again, you look at this roster, if you take out the superstars, I was going to ask you, how many goals do you think Carter Verhaeghe scored this year? Because I didn't think it was 42. I knew he scored a bunch, and I know that he is under the radar, one of the best scorers in the league, but it just seems like nobody talks about this guy. Like, even in the postseason run, he has 15 points in 16 games, and nobody is talking about him. It's not like he's just came out of nowhere this season. He's been good for the Florida Panthers for a few years now. And if the Penguins could just almost like a pick swap when it comes to sports gambling, if they could a player swap with Carter Verhaeghe and Mikael Granlund, Penguins would be 100% better for it.
Oh yeah. He's got 3 game-winning goals in the postseason too. The Florida Panthers have won however many games it is, 12 so far. 7 of them have been won by either Carter Verhaeghe or Matthew Tkachuk.
Jesus.
Do you need to know too much else?
No. I think that's all that needs to be said with that. So, all right, cut and dry. The Penguins get Keegan Colasar, Carter Verhaeghe, and Ivan Barbashev for Jeff Petrie, Jeff Carter, and Mikael Granlund. Everybody wins.
Yeah, so you just set up a great lineup there. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, 100%. I think that's fair for everybody. We'll throw in a first-round pick to Florida as well for their 40-goal scorer. I think that's fair. Yeah, done. Hire me as the next general manager of the Pittsburgh Penguins while you're at it. Jesus.
Kyle, I hope you're listening.
Yeah, Kyle already doing his research into the Penguins' best podcast, and then tip the iceberg here. No, but let's finish off this segment really quickly, talking a little bit about Teddy Blueger, because the Penguins traded him away in an auspicious effort. I don't know why I tried to say a fancy word there. It just messed me up. To get Mikael Granlund. Doesn't seem like that worked out at all. But Teddy Blueger is a UFA this summer. Would you take Teddy Blueger back on the Pittsburgh Penguins?
Nah, I don't think so. I think
Really?
I'm just in the zone of getting change on this team, making adjustments. And sure, Teddy Blueger was a useful piece, regardless of the validity of the exit. I'm for making changes to this team anywhere possible. No returns should be made. Like, no one should be brought back to this team. And you know what I'm trying to say. If you've already left, you've already left. That's enough of that. We're looking for change on this team that can be positive. I get that you're giggling, but
I love that's enough of that. That got me. That got me, man. I'm sorry.
That's all right. But no, that's the way I'm looking at this team. It just needs lineup changes, front to back. And like I said, I'm not looking at this team directly like the Leafs, but they're elite. The Leafs are a team that need that splash trade. They need something to happen to instill major change and a major wake-up call for that organization.
Mm-hmm.
And it feels like the Penguins are on that same sort of path. They need that major, big change to instill, to light that fire again. I don't know what it could be, because we just went over trade pieces for the Penguins. There aren't many. That makes sense to really get the juices flowing, but you got to figure one out. And if that involves, like you said, like a Jason Zucker walk, let it be that. If it involves not bringing back Teddy Blueger, let it be that. Let's see some change in this organization that reignites something. We get the team was close last year with not much, but it's going to be a different year next year.
Yeah.
Other teams are waking up. We got to be one of them that stays ahead of the curve.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the New Jersey Devils, the season that they had, the Ottawa Senators and their trajectory right now, the Buffalo Sabres. I mean, a full season of Devin Levi. We'll see what that ends up doing for them, actually having a number one goaltender instead of having a 6-man rotation or whatever they had. They had like a baseball starting pitching rotation in net. It was crazy. Yeah. But I would actually disagree with you, because first and foremost, I think this was an outlier season for Teddy Blueger. Certainly it doesn't help that we always want to see players go up and up and up and up. And when you see them have a down, especially the way that Teddy Blueger had this season, you kind of get soured on them going forward, especially when it's not a player that has been a top 6 guy, has been a goal scorer. He's kind of done all the dirty work, kind of done all the underlying work. But I would take Teddy Blueger back, especially because, I mean, that price tag is not going to be hefty, and you need to rebuild the bottom 6. And I'm not sure how much money you're willing to spend, but you need to have guys at cheap prices that can get the job done. And I feel like Teddy Blueger has always been that. Yeah, he's coming off a bad season. Clearly he is. But he was loved by his teammates. He remains a good option defensively. His underlying numbers haven't really dipped much this season. Yeah, they're not as good as in the past, but they haven't dipped much. And while his scoring took a hit, I'm not too worried about the scoring of a fourth-line center. I'm hoping he gets more than 1 goal, which is what he had with the Pittsburgh Penguins. He usually finishes between 7 and 8 previously in seasons. If he's back around there, or even at like 6 or 7, sure, considering what he does defensively, considering what he does for the penalty kill, I would take that. And also, everybody's numbers dipped in the Penguins' bottom six because it was atrocious all the way around. So I'm not going to hold that against him when thinking about whether or not to bring him back. But also, I'm thinking of the Penguins' fourth line right now is Drew O'Connor, Teddy Blueger, and Ryan Poehling, and that to me is a solid fourth line. And then you have Alex Nylander to start your third line, and then you need to find two more spots. You need to figure something out with those two spots and second line left wing. And then you already have a better forward core, in my opinion, than what you saw this season.
Don't try and talk me into it.
It's my job, Horwat.
No, it's not. But that's okay.
It is my job. I'm supposed to believe wholeheartedly in my takes, and I believe very heartedly in this take.
Absolutely, and you're absolutely right. That is what you should do. But yeah, I guess we'll just have differing opinions on it because
Perfectly
it's time
fine
for the change. Yeah,
that means one of us will be right, one of us will be wrong, and that's always fun.
And we won't bring it back up regardless.
Oh, we will. I will. I keep receipts, Horwat. You know that.
Fair enough.
But no, regardless, it's going to be something that's going to be broached this summer. I'm sure Teddy Blueger's camp and I'm sure the Pittsburgh Penguins camp will reach out to each other and at least test the waters. I don't think the door is shut on that relationship by any means. Personally, based on what I've all the information I have at my disposal, I don't see any reason why that relationship would be severed. So it's something that I would think makes the Penguins a better team next year. But the problem with that is you do still have Jeff Carter on the roster. You do still have Mikael Granlund on the roster. And you do still need to find another option for second line left wing. And that becomes a lot. And also, are you going to block Sam Poulin? But I don't think Teddy Blueger should ever block Sam Poulin because I don't think Poulin should ever be a fourth line center. And Blueger probably is not going to be a third line center. So, I tried to bring up a roadblock, Horwat, and it didn't work. I busted right through it. So I'm all for it.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. But we're going to take a quick break. When we return, let's talk a little bit about Alex Nylander because I feel like we glossed over when he was signed back in April because, well, we didn't expect the signing when there was no sitting general manager. We'll talk about Nylander after the break. Podcast brought to you as always by Inside the Penguins. The Penguins, a couple months ago now, signed Alex Nylander to a 1-year, one-way contract, about $775,000. That was in April. Penguins didn't have a general manager. It's June. Penguins still, it's June. That's weird. That's weird to say. It is already June of 2023. But regardless, we move on. It's June. The Penguins still don't have a general manager, but they do have Alex Nylander on a 1-year contract. So let's talk about what that is. Because Alex Nylander finally made his debut with the Pittsburgh Penguins last season and was a breath of fresh air for that lineup. I think we can all agree that when he got into the lineup, we said, okay, this is something fresh, something we haven't seen. It's new. It brings just an air of exuberance and youth into the lineup. And it was a simple way for the Penguins to begin to get younger at the NHL level. We've talked so many times about how they were the oldest team in the NHL last season. In 9 games, he scored 1 goal, 1 assist. So the counting stats didn't follow him. But the performance was enough to garner a new contract on a one-way deal. But the question becomes, does he begin training camp, which is still a few months away? Does he begin training camp with a roster spot? Horwat, that's the question I pose to you.
Yeah, I believe he does. I mean, it's a one-way deal, and that doesn't necessarily mean anything towards NHL or AHL status, but you gave him that faith. He kind of earned it in his few games last season. He proved that he can cut it here. I mean, unless we make multiple signings that push him directly out of the lineup, I think he's a guy that's starting on your third line without doubt. He's better than what we have for sure. So I think it's an easy option to stick him into the lineup during right away as training camp starts and have him fight for a spot that he's most likely going to take.
Yeah, the third line right wing spot is it. You said it. I agree. It's likely his spot to lose at the moment. And also with so many other holes to fill for the Pittsburgh Penguins, on this roster. I mean, they need a starting goaltender. They need to do something with that defense because it went from 6th to 21st in expected goals allowed per 60 minutes. You need to start reversing that action as soon as possible, because no matter who's in net, that's not a good stat, and that's not a good way to play hockey, and that's not a good way to try to win games and make the playoffs. They need a top 6 guy because they don't have another one on the roster. Now, Nylander, while I wouldn't start him in the top 6, I wouldn't expect top 6 minutes from him and top 6 production from him. In the case of an injury, in the event of an injury, I trust him to go up there for a handful of games and not completely drown. Is he going to go up there and produce like a top 6 winger? Unlikely. But do I trust that he's able to fill those minutes and fill that role for the time being? Yes. As long as it's not a quarter of a season or anything more than that, I trust that Alex Nylander can keep his head above water on the Penguins' top 6. He showed that last year. And while he isn't the number 1 option, he's not the guy that you should look at and be like, okay, he can replace Zucker if Zucker doesn't come back. Right. That's not gonna happen. But I think he's a good option to start on the 3rd line and potentially, if need be, move up. So I think it's a good contract for the Pittsburgh Penguins. He's a younger player. Signing him to a 1-year deal under $1 million. We talked about it when it happened. It's cash money for the Pittsburgh Penguins, and that's why they could make the signing without a general manager in place, because league minimum for a 25-year-old, you might have to check me on that, 25-year-old winger that has played in the NHL, has marinated in your system for over a year, and has shown positive results with the team despite not getting the actual counting stats to come along with it. He was a positive aspect of the team at the end of the season, and that's all you could ask for when you're trying to rebuild a bottom 6 from the ground up, because that's where they're at.
Yeah, and you're right, 25 years old, just turned 25 in early March. Former first round pick too. He's got
8th overall.
Yes, yeah, he's got the pedigree to live up to as well. I mean, he only played 9 games. It feels like he only played 9 games. It feels like he played half the season for how much people talked about him before breaking out in the NHL, and then finally getting there and looking good in his first game immediately.
He spent more time driving on the Pennsylvania Turnpike than he did actually playing in games as a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins last season.
Yeah, he did. It's quite impressive. But now he deserves his spot in Pittsburgh, even because it didn't look like he missed a step at NHL speed, even without playing since the bubble? I think that's what it was.
It was over a year and a half. I don't remember if it was fully 2 years or not, but it was a long time. It was a long time.
Yeah, because his NHL playoff stats, his only ones are from Chicago, 8 games in the bubble. So that it was his first NHL, his first hacks at the NHL since the literal bubble. So the fact he was able to do that and still look feasible, yeah, he deserves his chance. He deserves a spot.
Yeah, and something else we mentioned too is defensively, everything we had been told, or at least the narrative surrounding Alex Nylander was, well, he's got a lot of work to do in the defensive zone. He is not a complete player. He does not like to play defense. He more than held his own from what I saw in those 9 games. I didn't think there was really any major issues or major cracks in his game defensively. Certainly not in the effort department. I don't think there was any issues there. Again, 9 games is just over 10% of the season. I understand when you get to the 60, 70, 80 games, you're going to have some issues that crop up that you don't see in that first 9-game sample size. But compared to what the narrative was about his defensive abilities, it was nowhere near what I saw in that sample size.
So I understand the concept of you need to be a complete 200-foot player to play in the NHL. Do you? Do you really, though? Because let's be real here. Connor McDavid's not playing defense. Whenever he doesn't need to. I'm not saying Alex Nylander is Connor McDavid, but at what point are we going to drop this, you need to play a full 200-foot game to be on our team? Because genuinely, if you can provide enough offense that your defense can pick up, I don't know how to put it. Essentially, what's wrong with not being able to play defense, but what's wrong with lacking in defense?
Nothing if you could make up for it. That's the most important thing that you said. If Jeff Carter, well, bad example because he wasn't great at defense. If Zach Aston Reese, when he was with the Penguins and he was part of the Aston Reese Blueger Tanev line, if Zach Aston Reese was a sieve on defense, he wouldn't have been in the NHL because he didn't bring any offense to the table. So he needed to be good in the defensive zone. He made his entire career to this point off of being good defensively. Now, it doesn't mean he's selling out to block shots. It just means he's making smart decisions. And when he's on the ice, his team doesn't give up goals. And he plays the position the way it needs to be played in their own zone. It doesn't quite mean A plus B equals C, right? Hits and blocks equals good defensively. It is a much more difficult thing to quantify, especially at the NHL level, because everything shifts around so fast. That's why in the NFL, it's very easy to quantify who is a good defender and who is a bad defender. In the NHL, that's why we have analytics. And if you haven't got onto analytics, you might want to, simply because FSG and the Pittsburgh Penguins are going to start emphasizing that more with this new management group. And that is also the easiest way, the only real way, right, to quantify defensive efficiency in the NHL. And that is why certain players, if they can't make up for it offensively, they need to be good defensively. They need to be as complete a player as you can be to stay in that roster spot. If Ty Smith can't play well defensively, he's not going to be on this team. He's great on the offense. We've seen already, short sample size, and we're going to have Nick Hart on at some point this summer to try to talk a little bit about Ty Smith and what he was able to do in Wilkes-Barre, because we didn't have eyes on that as nearly as much as we had eyes on the Pittsburgh Penguins. But if he can't build up that defensive style and he can't be at least good enough defensively to stay in the NHL, his offense is not going to make up for it, because while he's great on the offense, he might be a great power play guy. If his defense isn't good in that position, then it's not worth having him at the NHL level.
Did you catch the little full circle moment we had there, by the way?
I did.
Once again, discussing the new GM eventually. It's
in the back of our minds because we're looking for it. It is day 13, as you mentioned, of Dubas Watch.
Yeah, in GM Watch, it's nearing
like
60.
Day 50, 60. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it does go along with everything that we discuss as well. So it's going to be part of every discussion. But yeah, Alex Nylander does deserve his chance, and that whole spiel on, maybe Ty Smith needs to produce defensively. I would hope he's a good at defense. He's a literal defenseman.
Well, yes, but
but yeah,
sliding scale for a forward to play defense and a defenseman to play defense. But yes.
But yeah, I'm glad you gave me that spiel on, just because I had this genuine question, because it's been happening for so long that the Penguins talk about it all the time. We need to work on your defensive game before you can make it to the NHL. I mean, I guess their offense doesn't outweigh it, because we've seen how many players in this league forever be pure scorers, pure playmakers. They don't play defense. Sidney Crosby built as his career went on, built into a defensive mindset player. Alex Ovechkin still doesn't play defense. I mean, again, I'm cherry picking here obvious answers of How about Victor Olofsson? He was a power play person for a long time. Did he ever play defense? I don't know. I haven't seen him. Isn't he like a healthy scratch now in Dallas?
I have no idea where Victor Olofsson is.
Don't ask me why I know that.
Yeah, I have no idea where he is. I remember he was on the trade block for probably the last 2-3 seasons. But I thought he stayed in Buffalo. I might be wrong. I don't know. But
it's Frederick Olofsson. That's why. Okay. So maybe he is still in Buffalo. Anyway.
Yeah, I didn't think Buffalo traded anybody away this season. I think they added like 1 or 2 guys at the deadline, like small names, which, hey, good for Buffalo. That's a good way to go about it, because their team was good this year. But no, anyway, with Alex Nylander, and a similar thing defensive-wise, by the way, Valtteri Pustin. We'll have to get it to the bottom of that and why the Penguins didn't call his number at all this season. Obviously, there was a log jam at the NHL with, I think talent's a strong word in the bottom 6. But regardless, we'll have discussions on Valtteri Pustin this summer. Again, something we could ask Nick Hart about when we hopefully get him on at some point here in either June or July. But that's going to do it for this episode of The Tip of the Ice-Burgh. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Remember, #DubasWatch. Maybe by the end of this week, maybe not. Who knows? Who cares at this point? Just give me a freaking name. That's going to do it for this one. We'll see you guys next time.